Hello and welcome. This is the Fit for Privacy podcast, the podcast for professionals. I'm your host Punit Bhatia. In this podcast, we talk to influencers so that you get to listen and learn from their experiences and thoughts. Remember, this is not legal advice, and if you need one, please contact a professional with your situation. So let's get started. Hello and welcome. Today in the Fit for Privacy podcast, we have a special guest who's a European data protection lawyer. He's a DPO. He's worked in the United States and Brazil. He believes that privacy is an international issue. And last time I was speaking to him, he was telling me that all DPOs should know more than the GDPR or more than the regional law. And we're going to talk to him about that, of course, and he is Marcio Cots, the COO of GetGlobal International. So welcome, Marcio.
Thank you very much, Punit. First of all, thank you very much for inviting me for this podcast. It's definitely going to be a pleasure to spend some minutes with you talking about what we love, which is data privacy, right?
Absolutely. And before we start, maybe tell us your story. How did you end up in privacy? I mean, of course, in a good way. We are so happy to have you in privacy, but how did you come into privacy field?
Actually, as an European lawyer, I've been working with cyber law for more than 18 years. So data privacy came just because we've been studying and working with the legal side of technology. And at some point, we started to work with the privacy on the internet, and privacy became data privacy, and not only privacy on the internet. And now we have this whole privacy environment related with the online and offline issues. So that's how I got here, by being an European cyber lawyer.
Good. And I heard or I saw that you also are a professor in the digital business law, right?
Yeah, that's right. So when I had the chance in 2005, I attended a program at Harvard Law School at Berkman Center. Mm-hmm. And since then, I just got in love with the cyber law. And then I started teaching cyber law in some MBAs in Europe, in Brazil, mm-hmm. even in Angola, mm-hmm. in New York. So yeah, I've been teaching cyber law, and mostly nowadays about data privacy.
Interesting. Very interesting. So let's maybe start with a quick round of simple questions so that we get a warm up a bit. Why do you believe in privacy?
Actually, privacy makes part of human history. Yeah. Privacy just change from time to time, but it's not a new thing. What is new is the technology, right. Is the use of personal data or personal information under the CCPA. But privacy is not new. It's something that makes part of human being. So I believe that privacy makes part of one's right. So that's why I believe in privacy.
Absolutely. I think you say it's spot on. It's not new. It's the digital privacy that's new.
Yep. I totally agree with you.
Of course. I think we seem to agree on a lot of things, it seems, since we started speaking. And how would you describe GDPR in one word?
In one word, beginning.
Good. Beginning. Beginning of?
Of privacy, of regulation of use of data privacy. I think it was the beginning of understanding the importance of regulating the use of data privacy. Right. It's the first, let's say, it's not a law, as we know. It's a regulation that there is a difference under the European law system. But it's the beginning of official regulation on the use of data privacy. So that's why I think this is the beginning of data privacy. Once some other countries are thinking about regulating the use of personal data, the processing of personal data on a GDPR-like way
Right.
of processing personal data. So we have Europe, we have Brazil,
Yeah.
a country that has a GDPR-like regulation.
Yeah.
India is debating its own data protection law, but it has this GDPR flavor.
Right.
And even the US, that has a different kind of regulating personal data. We've seen some bills, as the state of Washington, that was debating a GDPR-like regulation. So I think this is the beginning of regulating the use of personal data. So answering your question, by defining GDPR in only one word, I think this is the beginning of the regulation of personal data.
Yes, it is the beginning. And then how do you see this privacy becoming an international issue? Because when you say get global and every time we speak, you say privacy is an international issue. So why privacy is this international issue?
Actually, our slogan is data privacy nowadays is global, because it is.
Yeah, it is.
Actually, we realized that personal data was something global by the projects that we've been working on. Once you start a project to build a data privacy management program in an international company, a company that has business in different parts of the world, you have to deal with different ways of regulating the use of personal data. So, and people is everywhere, and a company might be located in one place, but they will probably process personal data of people from different parts of the world or located in different parts of the world.
Yeah.
So that means that any international company that process personal data of people in Europe, in Australia, in the US, in Canada, in Mexico, in Argentina, in Brazil, they will have to deal with data privacy rules.
Right.
So that's why data privacy nowadays is global.
Absolutely spot on, and I fully agree with that. And then, if that's the case, how do you see privacy, or what do you see as the future of privacy, maybe say in 10 years' time?
10 years' time, I think, hopefully, we will pretty much know what the rules are, because at some places, in some countries, this is something new.
Yeah.
And every time that you have a new regulation, it takes a while to make the whole country adapt and comply with this kind of regulation, especially because this kind of regulation changes the culture of and the way people process personal data. So it's going to take a while, but maybe in 10 years, this is going to be something quite normal during a day-by-day regular life. And it's going to be make part of the culture to think twice at least when processing a personal data. So I think that in 10 years, it's going to be part of the global culture of respecting personal data, but respecting in a way that you can still do business. This is something very important. I think that privacy doesn't mean that this might be more important than do business, than generate work and pay tax and so on. So we need to find the balance between both things. And I think in different ways, globally wise, we are doing a good job. Of course, there is the European standard that goes more toward privacy, and the American way that is a more business-oriented standard. But it doesn't mean that the US doesn't have a regulation. It's just different so far.
Yeah. I think it's certainly different, and people are going to need time to get used to things. GDPR is more framework oriented, principle oriented. So for those looking at answers straight in yes, no, they don't find it, and that's where they find it challenging. While
Yeah.
sometimes people clearly look at it, can I do this? Can I not do this? Rather than having you can do it this way or that way, that becomes okay. What do I do now?
Yeah, actually, a data privacy professional, a chief privacy officer, or a data protection officer is a mix of things.
Right.
Is a little bit project manager, a little bit of IT. At
Yeah.
least you need some knowledge, information security, and legal. When you
Yes.
put this together, um, the legal side is like more than 50 tons of gray, and
Yeah.
in the IT is more 0 or 1, yes or
Right.
no. So you need to understand how to use both things. But at the end of the day, nowadays it's a legal matter.
Right.
So it's not just the good practice.
Yeah.
It's a legal matter. So at the end of the day, there is no yes or no. It depends on the context. So that
Right.
means that we need to understand a little bit better the whole situation to then come up with a solution depending on the kind of problem that you're going to face.
Absolutely. And I think that's what we need. While we need companies to get used to privacy, we also need the data professionals to get used to the new way of working wherein they need to understand everything. And if we talk about that, what is that one mistake you see DPOs or data protection officers or professionals making it consistently?
Mistakes. It depends. It depends on the core business. Because I see nowadays, I already see different kinds of DPOs. The other day, I was debating during a webinar, and someone asked me, "What are the skills that a DPO should have to be a good DPO?"
Right.
And I said, "It depends." It's a
Yeah.
typical lawyer answer.
Yeah.
It depends because during this event, I was with two of my friends.
Mm-hmm.
One of them is Fujitsu data
Mm-hmm.
protection officer, and the other one is L'Oreal data
Mm.
protection officer. Two different companies, two different
Right.
business. Of course, the data protection officer that works for Fujitsu needs to understand a little bit more the information technology side
Right.
of things because he's going to do a lot of privacy by design. It's an
Yes.
innovation company, I
Yeah.
know the innovative company. What other company that's more oriented and it's to the brand, its biggest asset is the brand, the marketing.
Yeah.
It's a different kind of skill. A bank might need someone
Yeah.
more compliance.
Yeah.
So I think that it depends. The same thing with other kinds of professionals, information security. It's
Right.
quite hard to be good in everything. You need to understand and know a little bit about everything.
Yeah.
Be a specialist in something that might be the most important thing for the company you work for. So I think this is the biggest mistake. I think sometimes people think that there is one recipe
Yeah.
and I'm going to take this program or that program, and that
Yeah.
means that I'm going to be the best DPO, or I'm going to take this certification or that certification, and that means that everything is going to be fine. So,
Yeah, I think there's no one size fits all answer. You need to contextualize to which context you are in and which culture or which objectives you have as a company. So that's very true. And then talking about compliance with law, the privacy landscape is changing and changing very fast, like you spoke about the laws in India, US, I think Thailand, Brazil, Pakistan. Everybody is passing a new law. It seems to be a fashion in privacy these days. A new law is coming every few days or weeks. So, how do companies cope up with this changing landscape on privacy, especially the multinationals?
yeah, well, definitely they need to hire specialists that leave data privacy every day because you need to keep updated on
Uh,
these regulations. And so definitely it's something that nowadays most companies understand that they really need a consulting company or either a law firm or a specialist that is going to help them to comply with those laws. I think this is the only way you can comply with this kind of law.
So get good professionals.
Yeah.
That's good for both of us.
Yeah. It's been good. I mean,
it is.
GetGlobal is doing great. It's not only GetGlobal. We know that there are so many specialists, so many good consulting companies, law firms, even software. It's a new market.
It's a new market, and it will develop. It's still developing.
Yep.
As we were saying, GDPR is just 2. So at 2 years, a toddler starts to walk, almost. So, and with so many privacy laws coming up, how would you recommend a company? Of course, they can hire a good professional, but how do they define a holistic approach? By holistic approach, meaning an approach that would kind of see them through 5 to 10 year period rather than every few months having to adjust and adapt with another law?
That's a great question, because most of our clients are multinational, so they need to deal with this holistic way of dealing with data privacy. Usually the way that we solve this problem, most of the time, we analyze where this company does business. If it's a global company, we take GDPR as the standard, because that's going to cover part of most of the countries that take this kind of regulation. As I said, Europe, Brazil, even India, Pakistan, they are going this way, taking this path. Even the US, for instance, most of the things and the principles that you follow under the GDPR, they are applicable for CCPA or even other regulations in the US. Most people don't know, but in the US, there is a strong data breach regulation. Most of the states, they have their own state laws for data breach. This is one of the principles of GDPR, security. So the US just took a different path towards to the same place. They just decided that information security would be one of the most important things. Even before Europe had one data breach law or regulation. But by doing this and then adapting local needs, usually this is a way that you are going to solve most of the problems. But if it's a company that pretty much does business in the US, then probably you won't need to develop a data privacy management program based on the GDPR, right? The same thing with information security and privacy, like ISO 27701 or NIST privacy framework. Which one should I use? It depends. If it's a more global company, I would go for ISO, just because it's more global used. But if you pretty much do business in the US, I would go for NIST, and that would be fine, I guess.
So essentially, look at the major markets the company is operating in, and then make your strategy, privacy strategy, on how you want to approach and take it up like that.
Yeah, pretty much.
Good. And you mentioned that US has the information security laws, but how do you see the US privacy landscape emerging? Because we have seen CCPA, which is pretty good legislation. We have seen New York and Washington also coming up, and a couple of other states also thinking about bringing in a law. So how do you see this privacy landscape in US emerging in coming years?
Yeah, US has a different way of regulating data privacy. I would say that Europe's standard is more, it's a broad regulation. In the US, it's more sectorial. So you have some regulations for finance, education, health. So it doesn't mean that there is no regulation, it's just different. You have state laws as California and some other states that will probably pass into law some data privacy regulation.
Yeah.
But I don't see differently than many people in a short term the U.S. Having a federal data privacy legislation. I think it's going to take a while. I don't know if it will really happen.
Yeah.
So I think we'll have to still deal with this situation, sectorial regulation, and some states with some privacy laws. And this broadly and in many different states with data breach regulations as well.
Sure. So a mix of or a hybrid approach wherein there will be sectoral laws, there will be state laws, and some specific laws like for information security, for data breach, or specific needs that will arise. So a little bit more agile, more hybrid approach.
Yeah.
Good. And then we are also talking about something called industry certification. You mentioned NIST, you mentioned ISO. So what is your view on organization-wide privacy certificates? Do you see organizations going for, like we used to have the trend of CMMI 5 certification in the past, or still in the software vendors case, or even for other companies, or ISO standards? What do you see for privacy happening?
Yeah, I think those standards, those guidelines, they help the market to follow some standards, some guidelines. So I think it's useful. It shows that the company cares about it.
Right.
So I think it's a good thing. I was invited to make part of one ISO debating group about data privacy. I don't know that many people know, but maybe in 1 year and a half, 2 years, we're going to have one ISO for data privacy.
Right.
That doesn't follow the 7 principles of of privacy by design nowadays. Sorry. So we are going to have one ISO for privacy by design.
Oh.
That's I think that's a good thing.
Right.
The way we apply privacy by design nowadays is by the use of 7 principles,
right,
which has been helpful. But I think we can have some typical standards to follow to achieve privacy by design in a different way, maybe with some guidelines. Some companies will see what they really need to do to achieve those principles. They're still important, but maybe if you get deeper on the discussion by defining a guideline and helping company what to do to achieve those principles, that might be helpful. So this is something that we might start doing. Actually, the group is already working on it.
Interesting.
I was just invited to make part of the group, and maybe in 1 year and a half, maybe in 2 years, because it's a global debate.
Right.
Most countries, they invite specialists to put their point of view on this kind of matter. So I do believe that these kind of certifications are interesting and they are helpful.
Absolutely. And I think privacy by design with the 7 principles gives you a good framework to start, but then to make it more practical, more actionable, more information can always help. And if you can have a standard and a certification on top, it only emphasizes the aspect of privacy by design and privacy by default. And then you often talk about in your terminology, international privacy is an international issue or international approach to privacy. So what is this international approach to privacy?
Yeah, I mean, international by taking, by doing things to comply with all the legislation that you should comply with. So this international way of seeing data privacy, mostly for companies that do business in different parts of the world, as I said. It doesn't mean that it needs to be a big corporation. Sometimes even small startups, they are processing data or personal information under the CCPA of people located in different parts of the world. I usually say that before anything, you need to be legal by default.
Right.
So you need to comply with those laws. So if you are thinking about a new business, a new product, a new service, you need to be legal by default. So
Okay.
you need to put into consideration that there are data privacy laws in different parts of the world, and you need this international way, this global way of seeing data privacy, or you might come up with some legal issues
Mhm.
in some countries.
So basically, take an international approach based on where you are operating, where you want to operate, and then decide, irrespective of whether an privacy law exists or not, to
Mm-hmm.
have an international privacy strategy.
Yeah,
Is that
that's right. Yeah, that's it.
good? So now privacy is all about, I mean, we can talk about the law and the compliance, but end of the day, it's humans working behind it, people.
Mm.
Because of course, we talk about people, process, technology, and law, but it's
Uh-huh.
people that drive, define everything. And
Sure.
DPO role is very challenging. You already mentioned you need to be a project manager, you need to be a stakeholder manager, you need to be knowing the business, you need to know the market, the culture, and I don't know what all. So in that view, there are a lot of aspiring privacy professionals. Those who think that if we have to be in privacy, we have to be a DPO. So, in that sense, what would you recommend that if somebody wants to become a privacy expert, what should they do, and how should they start, and what should they focus on?
Very good question. First of all, you need to attend a program that will bring to you the basic,
Mm-hmm.
right? Uh, we have our program. We have our own data privacy course for data privacy professional. And the way we see it is that you need the foundation, which
Mm-hmm.
means you need to understand the rules, the law itself. But as you said, it's a human thing.
Yep.
That means that you need to understand what people do and if what they are doing comply with the law. So
Right.
this is more what we call the practical aspect of personal data. This is what we call the practitioner part of our course,
Right.
where you are going to learn how to identify different process in the company business, different behaviors of your employees and your service providers, your vendors, and by identifying what you need to change in order to comply with the law. By doing that, that's why I say that it's not only the legal side
Right.
that's important, but you need to do the assessment. I need to understand how you do things and see by applying this assessment what you are doing wrongly and what you should do differently in order to comply and what I should change. It could be, as I said, a process. It should be the mindset. So a
Right.
training would help. It should be an automatic way of processing personal data. So I might need to change the software that process the personal data unlawful, or I would need a lawyer to change the contract,
Right.
the paperwork. This is more management. It's not legal.
No.
So there is this management side of becoming a data privacy professional. And at the end, you need to understand information security.
Right.
Because if you process the personal data under the law,
Mm-hmm.
compliant with the law, but there is a data breach,
Mm-hmm.
a lack of information, uh, it's not going to work.
No.
And vice versa. You can
Right.
have really strong information security program, but if you are processing the personal data not complying with the law, you might get in trouble as well. So I
Right.
think you should know the law foundation, the management, how to deal with the company in order to comply with the law,
Yeah.
but you also need information security.
I think that's very true. Everything impacts everything. It's not just privacy, not just security, not just IT. You need to bring in everything together and look at how do you bring the knowledge of privacy law as a practitioner in an organization, and that's where the biggest uh, learning can be for the new aspiring people. But
And
that's quite,
just to complement, and if you want to become an international data privacy professional with an international career, of course, you should know different laws,
right,
different standards, the cultural aspect. If you talk with an American data privacy professional, he's going to have one mindset. In the
right,
European professional, a different mindset. So if you want to be a global data privacy professional, a global specialist, you should understand all aspects of the laws, how to deal with the situation on the management side. Information security is more standard, so I
right.
wouldn't worry about it. But if you want an international career, you should consider to also understanding how people do things in different parts of the world.
Right. And I think even within Europe, the way things are done in Belgium, France, Netherlands, Germany, it's all very, very different, even though it looks like one EU, but on the face of it or on the ground, things are very, very different. But let's then talk about another aspect of the human aspect being the DPOs, the data protection officers. What do you think is the biggest challenge they are facing right now or these days?
Mm-hmm. Again, it depends. Uh, as you said, even in Europe, things are different.
Right,
For example, in Portugal, being a DPO is a little bit different than being a DPO in some parts of Europe,
right.
because Portugal says that you have criminal responsibility as a DPO.
Yeah,
You might get in jail by playing the DPO role.
right.
So it's one thing. In some other countries, is a little bit different.
Yeah,
In Brazil, for example, there is no legal responsibility attached with the DPO role. Of course, you got to do your best job, but it's not the same kind of a responsibility that people have in Europe. In the US, the same thing. It's not the same thing. So it depends. Even in Europe, it changes a little bit.
mm-hmm.
Of course, if you are a DPO in France, in Germany, in Spain, or in any country, you need to get specialized in the way the country sees data privacy
Right,
by trying to understand the decisions by the courts, by the DPA, the data protection authorities. So you need to keep updated on the decisions that will come in order to make your company comply with those laws. So I think it changes from different parts of the world. In some countries, you need to take one governmental and official test to be a DPO,
yeah,
as it is in Spain. In some other countries, you don't need that.
right.
So it changes.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the challenge also varies from the jurisdiction to jurisdiction, but also at a broad level, the challenge is how do you stay updated with lots of information that keeps flowing, lots of fines, lot of discussions, lot of new laws, and it's a lot of information to digest. And that's where your webinars or other webinars also help a lot. So if you had a room of full of DPOs, let's imagine, and I know you end up in that situation quite often, what would you advise them? What would you tell them?
First, I would ask what are their goals.
Mm-hmm.
Depending on the answer, I would give different advice. So, for example, our next course, there are people from the state of Pennsylvania, the
Mm-hmm.
state of New Jersey, people from Brazil, people from India,
Mm-hmm.
people from Portugal, and people from Germany.
Mm-hmm.
If someone says, "Oh, I want to stay in my country as a DPO," I would say, as you said, you need to keep updated on these new regulations that will come up in your own country. because you want to stay there and your company does business there. But of course, sometimes you need to be updated on understanding how people do things in different parts of the world, because that might be helpful for you. But if you want to be an international DPO, because nowadays I'm getting in touch more and more with people who are global DPOs, the international DPOs.
Right.
Now, one of our clients is a company based in California, and this company does business in Europe, in Brazil, in Australia, and he is the global DPO of the company because he needs to run data privacy programs in different parts of the world to make the company comply with those laws and then keep on being compliant with those laws. It's not different than other professions, as you have the global CISO, the Chief Information Security Officer, as you have the global General Counsel. So the same thing. It depends on your goal as a DPO. I would focus on different things. Besides that, if your goal is to get specialized in some industries, I would recommend different skills. As I said, if you work for a bank, stock market, or things like that, so regulated, I would be more compliance. You work for an innovative company with a lot of innovation. I would try to understand a little bit about blockchain, a little bit about artificial intelligence, AI, and these kind of things, because I'm going to do a lot of privacy by design. So it depends on the kind of industry, because nowadays I see DPOs specialized in some sectors, and also specialized in some DPOs obligation. I even know DPOs who are specialized in data privacy impact assessment, or privacy by design. Depending on the answer they would give me, I would give different advice.
For sure. And if I change the scenario, that you are still in the conference room, but we replace the audience with, let's say, business leaders. So the business owners, business leaders, and what would you advise them in that case?
I would say that data privacy is really important. It's mandatory, is a must. Mostly because you can lose money, you can get some damage in your company's image. It's something that the consumer will ask for more and more. So you need to be prepared to deliver this kind of requirement by your consumers, and there is no way out. It's something that's already in place. So it's something that you definitely should consider as something strategic for your business. As quality is, as the reasonable price of your product and your service is, privacy should be something also strategic for your business, mostly because of the things that I have just said.
Very true. I think privacy is becoming strategic, and since customers are demanding, there's no way out, but rather offer them by default, by choice, than waiting for the law or waiting for something to happen. So it's wonderful to have this conversation with you, but as always, there are things which are time bound, and so is this conversation. So what would be your one key message to the audience? Our audience is more privacy professionals and business leaders. So what would be your one message to them in the end?
I think that we have great opportunities nowadays to do a good job. I think the governments are doing their job in order to regulate, but we are the ones who are going to take care of the human side of this whole thing and make people do the right thing. So this would be my message. Keep up with the work, and everything's going to be fine.
Great, Marcio. So it was great having you. Thank you so much for being here. So interesting to have your views on privacy in international scope. So thank you so much for being with us.
Punit, I appreciate your invitation. It was a pleasure talking with you about data privacy. And anytime you guys need us, we're going to be here for you.
Thanks, Marcio. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you liked this effort. Please do click like, comment and share. It is okay if you did not like it. Please still do make a comment and share with us what we can improve. If you have suggestions, ideas for guests, or you want to have your question answered, please email me. My email is info@punitbhatia.com. You can also share this with others, and if you do so while tagging me in, I will personally thank and acknowledge your contribution in coming episodes. Thanks once more and look forward to seeing you back. Till then, stay safe, stay blessed and stay happy.